Okay, part I-53 in step 25 is this part here, and although the windows are correct in terms of the number of windows that we've got and so on, the overall look, when you compare it to this picture, is just not right at all. And the issue is the thickness of these braces in between, dividing up the individual panes of the glass there. Now, the lower ones have like an opening door in, and in the kit you can see that's these slightly smaller windows here, so they've tried to emulate that. So we've got different things we need to do. I think we need to remove those totally and replace them with something a lot thinner, and possibly thin these ones out to make them look right. The ovals are okay, and I think if we do that, we should hopefully correct the look of this all in all. So quite a bit of work to do. So if you look at the back, they actually look better from behind, because they're thicker at the front than they are at the back. So thinning these out, I think, will definitely work as a solution. So we're going to work from the back and take some of these out and see what we can do to improve the look of this. That is my part now cleaned up. We've removed the little braces from all of these windows. Now these ones here are where the doorways are, and so what I've done is thin them down from the back using a combination of a seam scraper and a file, and then just going in and squaring up the edges with a knife. So I'm a lot happier with that. So what I need to do now is put those little supports back into the windows, and I'm going to use this, which is the thinnest white card I have. It's 0.02, and you can see that when we put that in, that is going to look a lot more authentic than what we have below. Remember, I've thinned those out, so this should look a lot better. We're going to glue it inside on like that. So what I need to do is cut a couple of straight strips, because I need to make 30 of these basically. And what I think we'll do is we'll cut them deeper than we need. glue them in at the back, and then just trim them down once they're glued in. So and it's not going to be easy process, because every window is going to be slightly different. So we're going to have to bespoke fit every single spoke, but it needs to be done. So let's cut some strips.
The most prestigious accommodations on board Queen Mary 2 are the duplex apartments, and there are 5 of them ranged over 2 decks, decks 9 and 10, at the aft end of the superstructure deckhouse. And these duplexes overlook the tiered after decks of Queen Mary 2. Now, the lower level of the duplexes, that's the lounging area, and it also incorporates a section for dining with an adjacent pantry. And these lower levels have access to the balconies, oversized balconies. There's a curved staircase that runs up past curved windows, and this leads to the bedroom area and large king-size bed with the bathrooms, obviously jacuzzi type baths and showers, walk-in wardrobes and the like. And the decor for the bedroom sections was originally inspired by Eltham Palace. And Eltham Palace was a Tudor palace that fell into disrepair, but was rebuilt in the 1930s by the Courtauld family of textile fame. And they rebuilt the palace in an Art Deco theme, much used today in documentaries and period dramas and the like. So that's what inspired the decor of the bedrooms of the duplex apartments. Now, the portside apartment is known as Balmoral, and the starboard side one is Sandringham, and there are 3 other duplexes sandwiched in between. On some occasions, all 5 duplex have been purchased in one group for trips. Must cost an absolute fortune. But these, as I say, are the most prestigious accommodations on board Queen Mary 2.
Okay, let's start with them. We'll start by cutting it slightly longer than we need. So we'll just keep trimming it, shaving a little bit off a little bit at a time until we get it to actually fit. So the best way to get this to work is to cut your your piece that's going to slot into the windows here. Cut them slightly oversized, and then so this length here is too tall to go into the window opening, and then you cut a slight angle from that starting point down to the back of the piece, which means that your piece is getting steadily shorter, and that means you can then go in from the front of the piece where you want this to go, and it will wedge into place when it hits the right length. So you can do that. It means the part will stay in the place where you want to glue it without it moving about. it's just a very quick, simple way of getting the depth right and placing it. Because we're going to need to sand this down to the thickness of flush on the front and stuff anyway, it's really not an issue. So I'm going to do the other 3 windows and then we'll glue them all in at the same time. Okay, those window frames are now all cut and lined up, so I should be able to just dab all of this with some liquid glue, and it should grab fairly instantly because of how thin this plastic card is. It's also an opportunity just to clean up your windows as well. So we'll leave that to dry and I'll continue cutting windows for these. Okay, so we have got the first 2 sanded down. I just wanted to make sure I was happy with the look before I carried on. I am. I think my takeaway is not to make those too wide. Probably half as long as they are. It just saves you a little bit of time, I think, in the cleanup. But once these have been sanded flush with the front, I think they look the part. So you've got to remember the glass in here will be darkened, so we won't see what's going on behind them particularly. So leaving that little length of carding is not an issue. So yeah, I'm going to finish these off camera because I need to get right close to them, and my new camera angle of looking down straight above means the camera is just about, or my iPad I should say, is just about level with my nose. So if I try and move my head forward, I'm knocking the camera. So yeah, it's a bit of a faff. So I'm not going to use this angle for everything, but it's good for some things, and I'm just trialing it out at the moment, so lucky viewers. So the gold medal models photo etch set provides us with some clocks, and there's a number of clocks dotted around, mainly the promenade deck, but there's 1 or 2 on the superstructure, and this has a clock on the centre here, and we're using one of the small clocks. It is in the instructions, so one of these is dedicated to this particular part. So I'm just going to remove that now, and we can put that on prior to painting it white, and then we can just pick out the details in black. So we need to make sure when we add the other clocks that we set them all at the same time. So the easiest way of doing that is have one of the hands pointing up or down. So it's going to be 2:30 on our ship. So that is our part ready for painting. What I'm going to do next is this part, and then we can paint several of these bits and pieces all at the same time. Same as we've got a little bit of painting to do on this, but this will effectively go on there, and that completes our part, other than railing, which we're going to do at a later date. Okay, that's my building squared up. I think that looks a lot better. So the next thing, of course, is to remove the raised deck caulking so that we can get the wooden deck down. And then we're going to have to do a little bit of painting before we put the deck down in this instance. Okay, I've removed all the deck caulking. The next thing we need to do is remove these little lips around the openings of the stairwells, because we've got photo etch to replace those. So simply done with a chisel. And then we can sand that smooth. Okay, so our pool here is the next thing that we need to think about. And it's basically right, but at the same time it's not right. For a start, the top here is a lot narrower than it should be. You've got a pool ring, and then you've got like a small decked circular area around it, which you've got then the railing going round. The steps don't have this sort of side on it, so we perhaps need to sand that down and take that level, but you should be able to see the edge of the steps. So I might sand that down to the level of the steps, but then we've got some railing to go on there anyway. I'm contemplating whether we wrap some card around there and thicken that up, or if we sand the top just to make the top a bit wider. See, there's a little ridge all the way around. See, there's a ridge all the way around that possibly doesn't need to be there. So I think what I want to do is to sand this a little bit first, and then make a decision based on how well that comes out. So I'm gonna just take the top down. I think that's actually giving us the effect we want. It's just making that a bit wider. Which gives us an area to paint. Now, it appears to be dark wood on the top, so that's what we're going to do. And then what I want to do is just take these two side pieces down to the steps. Like so. Okay, I'm happy with that now. So what we're going to do is we're going to paint the outside edges in dark Prussian blue, which is 7899, and we're going to paint the inside, the pool or jacuzzi bit, in blue-green 7808. And I might, it's quite a pale colour inside here, I might just add a dab of white into that just to make it a little paler. So that's our part cleaned up. We'll paint the pool before we put the deck down. Right then, part K56. This part effectively sits on top of the part that we've just been doing, like so. And what we've got is basically an empty deck with a jacuzzi in the middle, and then we've got a building here with one door which needs to be removed. And then we've got some steps. I'm not going to replace these with etch, I don't think. He says, I don't know. Let's just take a view. That's going to go on there like so. Yeah, they're not going all the way down to these steps, although they are a continuation. I'm thinking in real life they are not actually meeting up as a kit part. So what I do want to do, however, is take the blanks off so that we can get an impression of looking in rather than having to paint it black or something. So that's probably my first job, is just to saw that little flat off. So that's easily done. There we go, that's one down. And we can probably get in with a chisel to remove that now. There, and that gives us a nice look down the stairs there. So that's nice and easy. I'll do the other one. Right, we need to deal with this building. I have two things bothering me about this. Firstly is the door looks absolutely dreadful. So we want to take that off. That's a given. I think it's a wooden door. I haven't checked yet. I think it is. So we'll be using one of our little wooden doors with a porthole that we've made up. Anyhow, that is the door, for all intents and purposes, gone. Okay, now the other thing that's bothering me is the shape. So if I put it flat down like that so you can look at it directly from above, you can see it's sort of going in at the top, a bit like a pyramid brick. Now if I look at this from this angle here, I can see there's a hole there, so I know that this is hollow. But I can also see that if I put this against that, this is the end of the hollow. I think I have that much thickness of material to play with on the sides, which means I can straighten this up if I like, and try and make it look a little bit more authentic. Now, obviously, if we do that, we're then going to have a little bit more of a gap for the deck, but paint that white, it'll just look like there's a gutter around it, and I can live with that better than I can live with the triangular building. So I think my play is to sand that back a little bit. So I'm going to go in quite coarse to start with. Now the difficulty is on this side where we've got the jacuzzi, because it's in the way of a sort of a nice seesaw action, if you like. But on this side, it's not so bad. So what we're going to do is we're going to do the difficult side first. And I'm just going to hold this flat, and you can see I've got about 0.5 millimeter to bring in. By keeping that flat on the deck, I should be slowly levelling this up. That's the theory, at least. The reason I go in different directions is if you keep going in the same direction, you're not taking out your abrasive scratches from your previous time, and actually it'll take you longer and you'll have to remove a lot more material to make it smooth. But that might be the next quick tip, mightn't it? Okay, I think we're nearly there, but not quite. So you get the idea. I'll go away and do that and then show you what that looks like.
And then finally, why is the King's Court on deck 7? Why isn't it at the top of the ship? Well, if I'd put it at the top of the ship, if we ever had to muster the passengers for an emergency, you would have to have stood out on the deck. And I wanted to have a warm, comfortable environment where you could sit in and wait for the instructions should it become necessary. And the only public room deck I could put there was that King's Court restaurant. And so there are reasons for everything here, and it largely stems from the fact that this isn't a cruise ship, it's a North Atlantic liner. Now, I went to 5 European shipyards with my design, and I asked them to quote a cost of building the ship and also how long it would take. And after a lot of consideration, we chose the French yard of Chantier de l'Atlantique at Saint-Nazaire, the shipyard that had built the Normandy, which was the arch rival to the first Queen Mary, and latterly built the France of 1962. And here are the main particulars of the ship that we contracted. And there are a few important things here. We have the length, obviously, and the beam, the draft, but the air draft is an important consideration. That's the distance from the waterline to the highest point on the ship. And we'll see why that's important in a moment. We have 4 large diesel engines and 2 gas turbines on board to generate the electricity that runs this ship. It's 120 megawatts in total. That is the power that the whole of Southampton needs. So this ship, when it's needed, can generate the same amount of power as the whole of Southampton. We have 4 propulsion pods, and we'll see them in a minute, that actually drive the ship through the water. And she can carry around 2,800 passengers, 1,300 crew. The gross tonnage, 150,000 tons, which is a volume. Remember, it's not a weight. Means that she's 3 times the size of the Canberra or the Titanic, or twice the size of the previous Queens. And the displacement there that you see, 75,000 tons, that's if you would take this ship and put her on your bathroom scales, she would weigh 75,000 tons. You remember the Queen Elizabeth and Prince of Wales aircraft carriers weigh 65,000 tons, so we're even bigger than those ships. And one of the most evocative paintings of this ship is by Gordon Bounds, my good Scottish friend, who painted this, which I think really captures the spirit of this ship. So we signed the contract on the 6th of November 2000, and just over a year later, we started cutting the first steel. Over 500 draftsmen were working in the French yard, taking the plans that I'd given them to detail every single structural part of this ship. And it took them 2 or 3 years, those 500 people, to do the many thousands of plans needed to build the ship. And by taking those first bits of steel that were cut in January 2002, small sections were made, and they were joined together to form blocks. And we actually started laying the blocks inside the building dock in July of 2002. We floated the ship for the first time on the 1st of December that year, moved her down the dock, and then carried on adding. And by March the following year, she was structurally complete. Over 55,000 tons of steel had been erected in that short time since July the previous year. And this is what I mean by blocks. This is, of course, the bridge and the Atlantic room underneath there, and we see it being lifted on board. And there were 98 such blocks weighing up to 600 tons each. And this is the sequence in which they were added into the dock. The brown being the machinery areas and the lower crew decks. The green are these public room decks. The blue, the first cabin decks. And that's where we reached from July to that December, blocked off the ends, flooded the dock, moved the ship down, and then we continued adding pieces. There were about 3,500 people working on here every day to build the ship, and the yard had 5 other ships under construction at the same time, so it was a huge enterprise out there. But as the blocks build up, 98 of them, the form of Queen Mary II becomes evident. And here we see the ship in the dock in its second position. It originally started further down, and you see other blocks there being readied to be lifted on board.
Rather than adding the thinner directly to the paint, put it in a separate part of the palette so that I can add it at smaller quantities just by loading my brush up. As usual, more than enough. my pool painted up. We've painted up the building in the background. Now, the deck that goes above this overlaps, and these two ladders, staircases, whatever we're going to call them, they sit there like that. Now, I'm going to want to replace those with photo etch ladders to improve the look. So what I want to do is fill those holes before we put the deck down. So my solution for that is actually going to be to cut off the bottom of these steps, because we know that part's designed to fit, and then we can glue it and sand it before we put the deck down, and then we'll talk about the deck in a moment. So in theory, they should slot into place like a glove with minimal cleanup. Let's see. Yeah, they drop right through actually. They're a bit on the loose side. It's a bit annoying. Let's see if we can get them to stay in place. There you go, that fills most of it. So we'll put a bit more glue on there. We'll do the same on this side. Okay, we'll let those dry, and while that's drying, we can cut our deck out. So this is the deck here, and obviously it's designed to go around those steps, which won't be authentic. So I might try and patch that up yet, so not 100% sure. Let's remove the deck in the first instance, keeping its backing material on. Okay, so when we come to put the ladders in, we'll make a decision on what we want to do with that. So the deck's been cut slightly off centre. You can see there it's slightly off centre, but it's perfectly around the pool, the jacuzzi there, which is obviously the place it has to fit most tightly. So that's all down now, and that looks good, and that will form the roof of that section there like that. So, got a door to put on there, which we'll do when we'll install the deck. We've got to glaze that, which we'll do in a minute, and paint the clock face. That bit is done. Okay, time to glaze these windows. I'm using glue and glaze. I've never used it before, but it has a precision nozzle, so I'm interested to see how well that works. So I think those are openings, so I'm not going to try and glaze those. Let's go. That seems to work quite well. Yeah, that's all right, that. Now, I have to say this is a really laborious task. I haven't managed to fit one of these in the right place first time at all yet. Putting your finger behind it so that it doesn't fall through is the best tip I have. There must be a better method. This is taking forever. And you've got 90 odd of them to do. That's not including the ones we did on the children's deck below originally. I think if you're okay with the plastic parts provided in the kit, that is certainly the easiest option. But they do not look good at all, in my opinion. So we will get there. It's just taking up an awful lot of my time. Still not managed to get one to go in right first time. And I am cutting out the period of time it takes me to pick one up, orientate it correctly in the tweezers so that we have the cut slants in the right place. Then I'm dabbing each end with a bit of glue, and then you're seeing the camera come on. Did I just do one first time?